Welcome, everyone. It is a privilege to welcome you to the last A+D Mondays of the academic year 2021. If you don't know by now, my name is Shannon Jackson. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor of the Arts and Design here at Berkeley and Hadidi Professor in the Arts and Humanities. It's a thrill to welcome you to our series that honors and features the people and ideas, the movements and practices that most compel the UC Berkeley faculty. If you don't know by now, I'll also tell you that this series is co-curated by a range of campus organizations such as African American Student Development Office, the Berkeley Center for New Media, the Art Practice Department, the Arts Advocates of Berkeley Law, the Department of Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies, Cal Performances, BAM PFA, Grad School of Journalism, College of Environmental Design, the range of incredible campus organizations that contribute to the creative life of UC Berkeley. And in putting together this series every Monday night, we alighted upon a shared theme, a theme that we titled Together, Reinventing Politics, Reimagining Health. It was a theme that really spoke to our shared commitment to using the arts and deploying the arts for reimagining what it means to work together socially and politically, and also to develop an expansive view of what it means to be a healthy campus and to thrive together on it. I want to tell you more about the incredible Luminous program we have tonight, but in thinking about that pursuit of togetherness and of what it means to work politically, aesthetically, and physically toward creating a campus that thrives, I can't proceed further without also acknowledging the fact that we do this kind of gathering on a campus that is sited on the unceded ancestral territory of the Ohlone people. And in acknowledging the fraught history of UC Berkeley's relationship to the land and to the Ohlone history, we acknowledge also that the Ohlone people are thriving members of the Berkeley community and the Bay Area community more widely, and key members of a community that also seeks to do a reimagining of what togetherness means. This event is coming to you asynchronously today for other reasons that are allied with that political history. The event is coinciding on May 3rd, the day that has been designated as a day of refusal by a coalition committed to COPs off campus that is coordinating a range of actions during what we're calling Abolition May. So this event is being prepared for you thanks to the incredible commitment of the A+D team and the artists I'm about to introduce, in order to honor the day of refusal, but still allow you to engage with artists who understand the politics of what it means to be gathering together and the politics of what it means to attend to personal safety and in this extraordinarily challenging time. It is an event that has been imagined by my colleague, Kenyatta A.C. Hinkle. She will be introducing our luminous guest, the performance artist, Gabrielle Civil. But I'll introduce Kenyatta first before passing over the screen. She is an interdisciplinary visual artist, writer, performer. Her practice fluctuates between participatory projects and community-based gallery settings, where there is a kind of intimacy to her projects based on private experiences. Also, she works with larger scale events. Guided by a mantra that she calls the historical presence, she examines the residue of history and how it affects our contemporary world perspective. Her artwork and experimental writing has been exhibited and performed at the Studio Museum in Harlem, Project Row Houses, the Hammer Museum, the Museum of Art at the University of New Hampshire, SF MoMA, and many other spaces. Her work has also been reviewed by a number of publications, the LA Times, LA Weekly, Art Forum, Hyperallergic, Washington Post, New York Times, and she's been the recipient of multiple awards, including a Fulbright Fellowship and the SF MoMA Sika Award of 2019. Her works are now in the permanent collections of the Studio Museum in Harlem, SF MoMA, and many others. And her writing has also appeared in a number of distinguished venues, including Not That, But This, Obsidian Journal, Among Margins, Critical and Lyrical Writing on Aesthetics, and other texts as well. So it is then also thinking about the politics of being together, with an awareness also that this is our last event of the season. I think I'm only so privileged to be able to welcome you to an event that will combine the themes, the practices, the forms and histories and memories that we've explored throughout this series in a way that I know you'll find resonant and inspiring. And with that, I'll pass the screen over to tonight's guide for the event, Kenyatta A.C. Hinkle. Kenyatta, over to you.
Thank you, Shannon Jackson, for your introduction and opening up the space for us. The title of this talk is Experiments in Joy, a Black Feminist Trajectory. In this dynamic artist talk, Gabrielle Civil discusses her own trajectory as a Black feminist performance artist, highlighting key collaborations and inspirations, and promoting Black feminist joy as a creative practice. Gabrielle Seville is a Black feminist performance artist, poet, and writer, originally from Detroit, Michigan. She has premiered 50 performance works around the world, most recently with Wild Beauty at the Velocity Dance Center in Seattle in 2020, and in the Salt Lake City Performance Art Festival in 2021, this year. Her performance memoirs include Swallow the Fish in 2017, published in 2017, Experiments in Joy, published in 2019, Ghost Gestures, published in 2021, and The Déjà Vu, which is forthcoming for 2022. Her performance stills and videos have been exhibited in art spaces in California, Ohio, Minnesota, Mexico, and Brazil. A 2019 Rema Hortman LA Emerging Artist, she teaches at the California Institute of the Arts. The aim of her work is to open up space. May we give her a warm welcome from wherever you are viewing this lecture from.
Thank you so much, Kenyatta A.C. Hinkle. Oh, as you will see, Kenyatta is going to play a role in this dynamic artist lecture that I'm giving you today. And thank you as well to Paris Kotz for doing all of the production and behind the scenes wizardry that's bringing me here to you today. Here actually is the ancestral and current lands of the Tongva people in Southern California. Also known as Los Angeles, specifically the Los Feliz neighborhood. And I really am thrilled and delighted to come here and talk to you a little bit about my work and specifically my trajectory as a Black feminist performance artist, looking at, as Kenyatta mentioned, a key collaboration and some inspirations that have really informed the way that I think about performance art making. So here's the deal. You all know there's synchronous, there's asynchronous. Okay, so we're having this lecture asynchronous. So what I want you to do, you're gonna pause for a second. You're gonna take a deep breath. You're gonna get yourself some party water. You're gonna get your journal, your sketchbook, your notebook, whatever it is that will help you feel grounded and inspiration, whatever it is that can help you access joy, whatever that is for you. Also, because this is an asynchronous recorded experience, I'm gonna give you a lot of stuff, okay? I just have to. Here we are. I'm gonna give you a lot of stuff, and some of it I'm gonna go through quickly, but you know you can always pause, you can always rewind, and at the end, I'll give you a way to contact me if you have further questions, okay? So again, I'm so thrilled to be here with you today. I really wanna thank Professor Hinkle for the suggestion for me to come. I want to thank everyone from Art and Design Mondays. I want to thank the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive. And I want to thank you for watching what hopefully will be an invitation for you into joy. So let's get it popping here. I know you all are probably just sort of like Zoom aficionados. You know the whole thing so well, but just in case, you also can know that you can make me, well, we'll see if it's a recording. Maybe you can't, maybe it'll just be the screen. So just imagine this vision that you've seen talking animatedly next to these slides, because that's actually what's happening. So again, my name is Gabrielle Seville and I'm thrilled to be here. And I actually wanted to start today with a threshold. And because the kind of more synchronous webinar was ultimately kind of postponed or shifted because of the work of activists towards abolition and engagement, reform, transformation, shift of, I guess, the carceral state, the police state on campuses. I wanted to actually begin with something from a book that I love a whole lot called The Forgetting Tree by Ray Paris, a Remembering. And specifically, there's a section of the book that lifts up two people, and I want to dedicate this talk to those two people and to so many others who were in their circumstance. So that's Claude Kennard, who was born in 1927 and died in 1963. John Fraser, who you can see over here in a recovered front page of a student paper called The Student Prince from the University of Southern Mississippi, and so many others who attempted to pursue their education and were thwarted. So Ray Paris says, Clyde Kennard, a Korean War veteran, attempted to enroll in the University of Southern Mississippi, back then Mississippi Southern College, to complete his degree in political science after returning home from Chicago to help his mother care for the farm after his stepfather died. He attempted to enroll 3 times before they jailed him. First, in 1959 on trumped up speeding charges where they said he was in possession of alcohol. And then in 1960 on false charges of theft for allegedly stealing chicken feed, a conviction that would prevent him from applying to any of the white colleges in Mississippi. But this detail is irrelevant because after they finally released him, sick with cancer in 1963, they released him mostly because of the outcry from folks like Medgar Evers. Kennard died 6 months later. While the official diagnosis might be cancer, it's also true that many people and institutions with specific names like Governor J.P. Coleman, Governor Ross Barnett, College President William D. McCain, Judge T.C. Hobby, the Mississippi Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, and the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission killed him. Kennard was finally exonerated of the false charges against him in 2006. He left a few letters that he published in the Hattiesburg American about integration and schooling. And in one of them, he says, "We believe that there's more to going to school than listening to the teacher and reciting lessons. In school, one learns to appreciate and respect the abilities of the other." After Clyde Kennard, John Fraser also attempted to enroll at the university in March of 1964, but they turned him away. One part of Fraser's story that gets me, and this is Ray Paris again talking, is when he first attempted to enroll, the college newspaper took a photo of him and did a brief write-up. That same day, University of Southern Mississippi President McCain ordered people to confiscate all the papers. And so they went into classrooms and took them from students, did whatever they needed to do, and then burn them. They reran the paper without Fraser's story, just like that, erased. But student staff at the student print saved copies of both papers, The Truth and The Lie. I want to lift up those student staff as well at that paper that preserved the truth. And I just am so moved by the people from my own heritage and people from other backgrounds who have really worked to try to stake their claim for education. I want to start this lecture, which I'm so lucky to offer here for the University of California at Berkeley, here as a professor from the California Institute of the Arts, a Black professor. I mean, I had so few Black professors when I was in college. And I just want to say to my Black students, to my brown students, to my queer and trans students, to my first generation, my working class students, to all the students, claim your education, claim it. They don't want you to be here, maybe. The obstacles are there, but keep trying. We're here for you, and we want you to claim the knowledge, to become the artists and the people that you want to be and that we need to turn this world into something better. So that's my threshold. Experiments in Joy, a Black feminist trajectory. All right, so if we're talking about trajectory, we got to start with where it starts. And here she is, little Gabrielle with her monogram sweater. You see, I like writing. See, I have my name even written on my chest. What can I say? And I like to start with her because I really believe that the life I have is one that she dreamed up, despite it all, or maybe because of it all, in what I like to call the kingdom of Detroit, where she grew up, first generation middle class, with one African-American parent, my mother, one Haitian parent, my father, who were born on the exact same day, month, and year in two different countries. So you want to talk about people who were fated to be together and who loved one another and are still together 54 years later, there it is. That's where I come from. Here's more of what it was like. Deep community. This is kind of like the Haitian side, all hanging out, doing their thing. And from that background, I dreamed of being an artist, even though I wasn't exactly sure what that meant. I mean, I wasn't a person that had specific drawing prowess or, painting prowess. It wasn't just about the visual skill, although I loved visual art. For me, being an artist was about a way of being in the world. It was about traveling. It was about meeting new people. It was about imagining new things and trying to materialize imagination in community. It was about time traveling. It was about convening and conjure. It was about spirit work, even though I didn't have all of those words yet exactly. For me, that was what I was dreaming about, even as a young person, even as a girl. Those were the things that I wanted. And I feel so blessed to say that so far in my life, I have been able to pursue those things, and I'm still pursuing those things the best that I can. So for those of you who might not know much about my work, I'm just going to give you a little, almost like Pachacucha style, of series of images from my practice. And we're going to go backwards. We're going to time travel from some things that are more recent into some new things. And this is just going to be some quick shots, and then we'll expand out. Okay? So get your bubbly water ready. Get ready. Live art dossier. A question for me in performance art practice. As a Black feminist performance artist, how can I open up space to invite others, like this audience member coming from just from a chair, to come and sit with me and to have a conversation? Who's present with me? Who can I invite into presence? Even when that presence can feel like an absence. How do we understand presence as something both visible and invisible? How can we build rituals in Black feminist performance art practice? Collective opportunities with books in spaces like libraries. How can others, again, be invited into a practice of marking or shifting? How does the presence of others help make a body, my body, a Black feminist body, a femme body, a female body, a woman's body? How can the practices of others through art help to make that or those bodies more visible? What do we ingest? What do we vibrate? What is the space of desire? What are we grounded in? How does lineage come to create a power line from the earth to our hearts? How do we understand our own reflections? How does our reflection trace back to Black Atlantic, submerging, dissolving, thinking about the possibilities, the traumas, and the reinventions of diaspora? This one is very timely as well to reconsider. What can we understand or make visible relative to intellectual violence? In this work, I'm actually tied to the library at a university with a very long rope, and I'm tracing an encyclopedia volume, the encyclopedia volume for I across that line, that rope. Then we're dealing with aftermath, work specifically engaging the Haitian earthquake in 2010. How do we understand the loss that is both ours and not ours? This, we could have a whole talk just about this body of work, so y'all gotta invite me back. But what does it mean to be both in a place and out of place? And how do notions of Blackness or womanness or Black womanness, Black feminist, Black feminism circulate in a space that is not so binary, that has its own takes and traditions? So this is a huge body of work that I made. So much about ancestral return. What does it mean to return to a place where you've never been? This was a question that I had for the first work that I made in Africa, Ghost Gesture. Oh, to return to a place where you've never been, it means that you must be a ghost. So I played a lot with white sheets and other trappings of ghostliness. And again, ritual, the creation of ritual in these spaces as a fundamental practice, whether secular or sacred, in my own live art making. What are we dreaming, and how can we bloom from dream in the midst of winter? What kinds of messes do we make, and how do we clean them? Whose fancy party is someone else's debris or just detritus? Who's the bag lady? What's the party? Here again is another piece around history. For those who know, Anakauna was an indigenous queen of what is now Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and I became that queen and experienced her fall through the fatal flaw of hospitality, and the audience revolted against me. In the early days, trying to figure out how, where to make this work. This was a work that was really wild. I had moved from New York City to Minneapolis, and my walk-in closet seemed bigger than my whole apartment that I had had in New York. So I said, I should make a performance in here. And so I did, and the audience sat on my bed. My work has appeared in the streets, in art galleries, in my home, in site-specific spaces, and in theaters This was the first sort of commissioned work I ever did, and it took place at a venue that doesn't even exist anymore called Intermedia Arts in Minneapolis. And it was the first time I had to think about intersections of art and theater and how performance art, as for me, what I thought of as an art practice, overlapped, but also was different from making plays, which I'm also interested in. And one of the first things, look how grainy the image is, coming straight up from a VHS, y'all. Okay. And this was something that was also in a theater, at the Red Eye Theater. And there are other works that there really is no documentation of at all. So I've been making performance art for a long time and very blessed to be able to time travel backwards and look at it, and very blessed to have been able to move forward when I felt like I didn't have a model per se. I didn't go to school to make this kind of work. I made it, and making it helped me learn how to make more. This quotation from Bell Hooks helps to really ground a lot of my trajectory as a Black feminist performance artist. She says, "We, Black women, have resisted continuing devaluation by countering the stereotypes about us that prevail in white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, by decolonizing our minds, asserting our own understanding of our own experience. In a revolutionary manner, Black women have utilized mass media, writing, film, video, art, etc., to offer radically different images of ourselves, radically different images of ourselves. These actions have been an intervention." The intervention of offering radically different images of ourselves and using different kinds of media to do that are at the heart of a project I want to spend the most time kind of talking about or using as a prism to think through some practice aspects of Black feminist performance art, is a project called Call and Response, which led to the Experiments in Joy Performance Festival and the larger concept of Experiments in Joy. And here is an image that was from the poster from the Experiments in Joy Performance Festival. So here's what happened. I was offered a job at Antioch College, and I was very concerned about losing my context. It was a wonderful opportunity to really align my practice as a performance artist, as a Black feminist performance artist, with the teaching that I was doing or that I would be able to do. But I was very concerned about moving to such a small town. It's like population 3,245. I mean, I think there might be 3,000 people in this neighborhood right now that I'm in. Was really worried. I had lived in Detroit, I'd lived in New York City, I'd lived in Mexico City. I was a big city person, and I didn't know what that would mean to be able to come to this place that was in a pretty rural area from my perspective and try to make work. So in my conversations with the then president of that school, I said, you know, what would make this move more sort of feasible in my mind would be if we could have a festival of Black women in performance. And to my eternal surprise and delight, the then president of Antioch College said, "That is a wonderful idea. If you come, let's see what we can do." And I did end up going to Antioch College and working as a professor of performance there in the art division. And we did have a festival, a symposium, really a historic convening of Black women in performance called Call and Response. And what was historic and amazing about that convening was, first of all, that it didn't just happen, let's say, once, it happened twice. We convened the core artists, who I'm about to introduce in a moment, and we had as a main task to compose a call, which would really be a prompt, a collective prompt for artistic action. And then in the second part of this convening call and response, we would all return back to campus with our own responses to that call. And in the middle, anyone who was in the community, on campus or beyond campus, were also invited to be a part of that process of responding to what the call would be. And we didn't know what the call would be when we came together. That was our creative work. So the other thing that's exciting, and it's important to realize about this project, number one, even me, the person who sent out invitations to my fellow artists, had not met all of them. We were, as a collective, as a group of people, we were all kind of identified as Black women performers, but we all had very different relationships to the words Black, woman, and performance. We had different sexual orientations, different sort of gender orientations or identity, different ages. Some were mothers, some were not. Some had English as a first language, some didn't. Different kind of ancestries, you get it. We were different from one another, and yet we also had this common experience of having been understood or categorized in this sort of Black woman performer category, with performance also meaning theater, dance, writing, visual art, so many things, conceptual art and film, and many of us working, in fact, all of us working in more than one of these realms. So I want to lift up the artist, the original artist in call and response. And so I'm going to go just basically from my left to right. We have Wilda Rodriguez Lora from San Juan, Puerto Rico, Rosamandes King from Brooklyn, New York, Wura Natasha Ogunji, who lives in Lagos, Nigeria, and at the time was splitting time between Lagos and Austin, Texas, but now is fully in Lagos, Marae Regulus in Minneapolis, Kenyatta A.C. Hinkle, your very beloved professor, myself, now in LA, but at that time representing both Detroit. I will always represent Detroit, but also Ohio, where this was happening, and Duriel E. Harris, who's representing Chicago. So these are the original artists of call and response. And I'm also talking about this because I know Kenyatta said, we need joy. And you know what, after the year that we've had, we do. We really do. And this for us, we didn't know it at the time, but this for us was an incubator of joy. I'm going to show you, actually, it's going to be a little out of order. I want to show you some of the things that emerged from this convening. I mentioned that we ended up with a festival, and here are some of the images from that festival, really different kinds of work. You have dance, there was a DJ party, there was an auction, but all of it came from this thing that we call the call, okay? And the call, which was what we convened in the first half of the symposium to create, was generated through play, through laughter, through discussion and debate, through playing jump rope, through show and tell. I mean, it was a really generative and amazing process. And one of the things that we did, for 5 days, we shared stories and forged a process. We debated privilege, agency, and forgiveness. We worked, played, laughed, sang, presented work, and considered what we are all called to do. And we also, one of the things that we did was generate a series of questions. So I'm just going to read you a few of those questions to give you a sense of the way that we seeded and built a foundation for the collective work that we did together. What is the urgency? Here, you know what? I'm going to let you see me. Ha! What is the urgency of our invention? How can we engage in collective imagining? How does our work change when we create from a place of freedom? What is irresistible to us? Are you available to yourself and to your calling? How do we undefine the defined. And I know for Professor Hinkle, that's a hugely important question. How do we undefine the defined? How can we move through or without fear? How can we make art that manifests change for a more socially just world? How can we achieve radical openness? How can we claim joy? And to work these questions yourself, there's also a little workbook. But I'm skipping ahead. Let me go back. Those were the questions that really we created together to help us figure out what kind of call that we wanted to really call ourselves to respond to, and also to call for others, just this collective prompt. And ultimately, how can we claim joy? In response, we call you to conduct experiments in joy. And these were the 5 steps for conducting an experiment in joy. Step 1, tell the truth. Step 2, make something new. Step 3, invite someone in. Step 4, document. Step 5, repeat. I'm going to use these 5 steps as just a prism to help you know a little more about my own beliefs and a little more about my trajectory in Black feminist performance art. Step 1, tell the truth. Okay, this, especially after the last 4 years that we've had, 4 or 5 years, this notion of telling the truth, this can be the hardest step. Even something like this, a very simple statement of truth, can be very controversial to some. And of course, not all truths can be crystallized into such a simple statement, profound and yet still simple. What about a truth like this? This is one of my favorite images, thinking about the movement through the living and the spirit world, transitions of birth and death. How can we think about images like this as means of telling truth? How do we understand artworks, whether they are live art actions or 2 or 3D works? How do we understand them as vehicles of truth telling? What do we understand about truth for ourselves? Again, opening up space to allow myself and others to share what they consider to be their truths has been a fundamental practice in some of my performance art work. In Q&A, we worked with questions and answers. I flipped the usual presentation of art at an event where 95% is art, 5% is Q&A. I showed a work, so to speak, for 5%, and then the other 95% was all the Q&A. And we played with versions of questioning and answering as a way to tell the truth, or to get to what that telling of the truth might be. Step 2, make something new. Here, I'm so inspired by the performance artists who have come before me. I think about Adrienne Piper walking in New York City with a sign on her chest that said wet paint, or Dred Scott many years later with another sign kind of referencing the Memphis sanitation worker signs that said, I am a man, in the late 60s, I think it was 68. And this is an image from 2011, I am not a man. What does that mean? To make something new and to change into this new space. I am not a man, and walking in New York City. Here we have Popel, who I understand you had an opportunity to hear from even in this series, crawling on the streets of New York City, making something new of that trajectory, of that landscape, of his body, of that route. And this is an image, I don't believe Nona Faustine necessarily identifies specifically as a performance artist, but I claim Nona's work. It's so inspiring to me. And this particular image, from her body sprang the greatest wealth. Again, making something new of public space, making that intersection between the past, the present, and ideally the future, in terms of reshaping our understanding of where capital has come from. Here we are in Wall Street. Where did it come from, people? She's letting you know. This is a quote from Valerie Castle Oliver. Performance art by Black visual artists distinguishes itself by moving away from the stage and into the theater of the everyday and the ordinary. It is often temporal and engages visual elements, whether documents or objects. It is rooted in spectacle and occupies the liminal space between Black eccentricity and bodacious behavior, between political protest and social criticism. What cannot be denied is the notion that Black performance art is rooted in Black cultural expression and historical lineage. Again, that's Valerie Castle Oliver, who wrote this in the catalog of her really, I think, groundbreaking and awesome show, the catalog for the show Radical Presence, Black Performance in Contemporary Art. Thinking again about kind of that line between Black eccentricity and bodacious spectacle, it actually throws me back to a work that I made a long time ago and have actually remade at different times. This is called Displays After Venus. And actually, sort of if we were in person, the way that I would redo this, the people that you see there, they just were invited to an academic talk. And then a colleague at Mount Holyoke, a very nice white man theater professor, he just said, step right up. And then I just stood up on that table, took off my dress, and did a series of poses and brought the undeniable fact of my Black female body into the space, hearkening back to traditions of display. People like Coco Fusco have written so brilliantly about this, specifically kind of bringing in the legacy of Sarje Bartman, also known as the Venus Hottentot, and thinking about the specifics of my body and desire and freakishness and what's large and too much and hypervisible and invisible. And then doing a series of 4 poses in the 4 directions, putting my dress back on and having a conversation. And that's the piece. Make something new. Step 3, invite someone in. And that last piece I invited in an audience. I'm always in many ways inviting an audience, engaging in interaction, negotiating with ambient sound that you may or may not hear here in my house. And also these kinds of historical figures are really important to me. Living in a sea of time where past and future and present are all connected. Here's some people I think about a lot. Martin and Malcolm. Rosa, also from Detroit people, get it right. Marsha P. Johnson, a wonderful teacher of mine, Mayfield Brooks. They've written such beautiful letters to Marsha and done such incredible work around Marsha. So I feel very inspired also by Marsha. Intozake Shange, look at these beautiful plants and the butterflies on her robe. I think a lot about George Floyd, a kind of recent person who's now an ancestor. And I'm so thankful that despite all the issues and the work that we still need to do, I just need to lift up and say that, whoa, we just needed that verdict. We needed that verdict. I needed that verdict. I won't speak for you. I needed that verdict to be what it was, okay? And so I want to take this moment in terms of inviting someone in to ask you where you are with your notebook, with your sketchbook, with your party water, with your dreams, with your trajectory, with your history. Who inspires you? Who motivates you? Who has blazed trails for you? And also, how can lineage or inheritage, look at that, I love that, inheritance, but actually it is inherited, inform your work. Because when I think of my own trajectory, it has been deeply informative. It really has created the seedbed of my imagination. Now's the time for me maybe to speak about a work. This was actually something I showed at Call and Response. In the very first half, when we were convening the call and we all came together, we did a public show and tell. And the work that I showed in the first half was called Say My Name, an action for 270 abducted Nigerian girls. And of course, that number is not even fully correct, but the number comes from what they said at the very beginning. And behind me, you see the first notice that I ever saw, and there may have been earlier ones, and probably on the continent there were, but the first notice that I saw about the Chibok schoolgirls being abducted by Boko Haram. And I remember feeling the need to make a work about this. And so what I did is I did whatever research was available at that time, and I took the names of the girls that I could find, and I put the name of a girl on each sheet of paper. Like there were 270 sheets of paper, and there was a name on each sheet. But if I couldn't find the name, I put a phrase like a girl who was snatched, a girl who was snatched, a girl who was taken, a girl who got away. And I just shuffled those up, and knowing that they were supposed to be there to take an exam, I was the teacher. And we set a timer, I lit a candle, and I called roll, and I read each piece of paper I read a name or a phrase, and then I let that piece of paper drop on the floor, and the audience was instructed to do whatever they were moved to do. And so you can see in this instance that some people came and they picked those pieces of paper up. I don't often do my actions again, but this is a work I have done a couple dozen times, I would say, as an act of embodied remembering and as something to try to engage, explore, negotiate the futility of diasporic belonging, the sense of loss, the recognition of guilt, of aspiration, of love and desire for people I don't know but feel connected to. A way of trying to still bring whatever energy I can to these girls wherever they are, even now. So this was a work for me that was about inviting someone in, psychically inviting these girls into myself, trying to invite myself there, recognizing the complications and the challenges in that, and allowing for the audience also to have to navigate those complications and challenges. Document. Even in that last work, the way that those names were on paper, documentation is so important to me in various kinds. Not all documentation is in paper, of course, we know, but I can just say like, I'm a paper person. I'm a paper person. And in the second half of Call and Response, I did a work that was actually reckoning with my paperness. It's a person who came of age before the internet really took over, or before so much Black feminist thought was available online. I used to hoard every article that was printed out about art, Black women's literature, Black women's, whenever I moved, I would have these huge, big boxes just full of these different articles. And I thought, what if I could trust that I either had imbibed this work myself, or that I could get it, or I had a network that I could get it, and I could turn this work, I could turn these pieces of paper into wings, and I could fly, and I could transform the nature of this documentation. And so building a ritual around that idea was the central act of this work, is the thing with feathers. And by the end, you see that I have this long sheet just made of all of these articles that I had been saving for years that were glued together. And I was jumping and shouting and flying. Another important part of documentation and what it means to document for me, of course, is writing. My practice in performance art is so deeply enmeshed with my practice in writing. And these works are all a part of what I call a chronicle of performance body. In Swallow the Fish, I try to articulate something of my coming of age as a Black feminist performance artist and what it was like to start to try to make this work, and especially those early pieces, the closet show, the first pieces in the theater, the pieces where there's no documentation. That's an account of that. Experiments in Joy tells the story about this convening, this historic convening of Black women in performance, and also really fleshes that out to talk about the role of collaboration in my practice and in my work, and also balancing that with solos. What is it that we can do with other people that we can't do on our own? And also on our own, what is it that we can only learn or that we have learned through interaction with other people? If you want to do a deep dive into the precepts of Experiments in Joy, there's a workbook that the 7 of us had, created on the 5-year anniversary of that project, with some prompts to help you also kind of bring joy into your own practice. Like when I say joy, when we say joy, what comes into your body? What comes into your mind? How does your own practice relate to joy? These are questions that are explored there. And then these 2 books, Ghost Gestures, yay, will be available, ideally, I hope, on May 15th. It's been delayed a little bit. This is some performance writing, especially around diaspora. And then the Déjà Vu, which will come out on February 22nd, 2022, is really riffing on Black dreams and Black time. So this is a way that I have sort of created documentation of my practice and performance, but really the writing happens before and sometimes during and definitely after these works. And so it's really integral to the practice. If you're not actually documenting, or it doesn't have to be writing. Writing is good though, but it doesn't have to be writing. But if you're not documenting your practice, I would encourage you to do that, because there's so much juiciness for you in the future. And finally, step 5, repeat. Tell the truth, make something new, invite someone in, document, repeat. Here again are the beautiful artists of call and response. This was from our 2nd session when we actually had the Experiments in Joy Festival. And on the far end is Vernetta Willette, who is an incredible community member and vocalist who has since joined the Ancestors and who joined us on stage at that event. And so I always want to lift her up as well. Here again, in the spirit of repeat, are my works. And I feel so thankful to be in a space where I have been able to share in a published way some of my musings, because I was searching for this kind of work to help me as an artist when I was first coming along. And I loved Adrian Piper's Out of Order, Out of Sight. But other than that, I mean, I loved Deborah Hay, and I love, there's all kinds of work, but this specific kind of work about my own inheritance and heritage, lineage, I didn't have. And so this is a gift, I'm hopeful, to offer to people who were like me and to people who are nothing like me, but who might also enjoy it and benefit from it. So again, the Déjà Vu is coming out 2/2/2/2/2, and I want to thank my little me for setting me up on this path. And I want to thank all of you. Bye. And I think now, yes, Kenyatta A.C. Hinkle.
Hi, Gabrielle. Oh my gosh. That was just so phenomenal. Like, I mean, the questions that you, and they just kept coming and coming and coming and coming and coming. I was just like, just hitting me and all. Just thank you so much for such a beautiful, beautiful lecture and holding space with us and sharing your practice. And I mean, even what you just said about when you set out to try to make this work and kind of dreaming how you could be an artist that didn't necessarily fit into the conventions of what an artist is even considered to be. And just thinking about being a Black femme, oftentimes the art canon did not intend for us to be artists in any capacity whatsoever. You're kind of subjected to subjecthood. Like you are the subject
Amen.
of the photograph, the subject of the painting, even the subject of the anthropological documents. And
Right.
it's such a role reversal. So for you to not only be inspired by all of these amazing people who have come before you, whether they are a part of your own lineage or not, just the way that you're also creating this document and creating these spaces for the little future Gabrielles to pick up. I love how you give the shout out. I mean, it was just so beautiful. Like, I mean, inner child work and like lifting her up. I mean, we also had the loss of Makia Bryant, recently, child. And so that was so touching to see you hold space for a little Black girls, a little Black femmes, just dreams.
That's
Because
right.
we talk so much about during this time, even I've been studying a lot with the NAP ministry, how they talk about the theft of our dreams.
Absolutely.
The theft of the dream space. And you can interpret that in so many ways, but I don't know, I'm just so moved by how you pulled all of these spaces and selves together to really talk about what it means to kind of exist within this plane, outside of this plane. It's like, my son keeps asking me if I'm an ancestor,
Ooh.
And I really love that question. Am I an ancestor?
Wow.
And he says that he's an ancestor. And, he talks about how he had to come back down to earth and do all of these things. But I don't know. That just comes up so strongly for me right now after listening to your lecture. Am I an ancestor?
That's the Bakongo cosmogram right there.
Yeah.
That's like that's the cycle. And so that the unborn, I mean, so like those who have died, who've passed along, and then that transition into the unborn. So like those are the ancestors, but then they become the unborn and they manifest as us. I believe in that for sure. I also believe that we are our ancestors' dreams. I mean, just you and me right here, the life that we're living, come on.
And in this climate, that we're existing in, even us having to shift, our Monday lecture so that we can be in solidarity with Abolition Day. We are dispatching from that for this historical moment. But I've been thinking so much about the archive as muse and how you're building this whole archive of like, it's through you, from you, for you, about you, but it represents all of us at the same time. I mean,
yes, that is at the heart actually of what I am trying to do, and especially with these books. I mean, I think so much, and I talk about this, maybe I talk about it in all the books, but I especially talk in Swallow the Fish. When I think about Georgia Douglas Johnson wrote like Georgia Douglas Johnson had so many poems and poems and poems and poems that were right on her desk. And when she died, her sons just were like, oh, this is mother's writing. And they just threw it in the trash. Or like Anne Spence. So you need to have a talk with your son. He would never do that anyway. But still, just be like, whatever. This is like mother stuff. And we're cleaning out the room. And I don't know, we're putting our fishing poles in here. Whatever they were doing. I don't know. But then Anne Spencer, I mean, she wrote 1,000 poems in her life. And we have something like 20. She's like Sappho. It's just, to me, so much has been Modell Bass. There's a wonderful scholar who has done work on this person who was like a muse to Edward Weston and to Diego Rivera and to other Stieglitz. But then Black woman, she made her own work, but there's no documentation of her work. We only see her through the work of these other artists whose archives were considered to be more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was like, okay, it can't go down like that for me.
No.
And not for any of us. And
For any of us.
part of what I want to do is really contribute to the larger archive of Black feminist creative expression. Black feminist creative expression that can be women, that could be femmes, that can be female identity, that can be non-binary. So it's not for me necessarily even around like some specific essentialized gender identity, but it is around this kind of space that has been so infleshed and so marginalized. It's like, okay, so we have to really preserve that. I want to contribute to that. I want to lift that up. And then I also want to take my own work so seriously. And I want to help create the frameworks for that work to be preserved. Some of it was better than others. So it's not even about always saying like, there's warts and all in it.
Right.
Because that's the process. You know, some of what I'm doing lands, some of it doesn't. I'm growing, I'm changing, and to show that. So yeah, the archive is really important, and especially with the series of books, super important.
I mean, and you're so prolific, because I was like, hold on. There's 2 books, like I can barely even keep up. But I love that. I love your like insatiable appetite to just like, you know, produce and to be and to constantly challenge whose stories get preserved, whose just does not. And it's so interesting, like teaching my solo dolo performance art class, in which, hey students, in which we're really trying to talk about those intersections of performance art and theater, like what you're doing, you know, within your work. And your Venus piece, a major ancestor for that whole class is James Luna.
Oh, you know? Yes. Whoa. Yes.
Yes.
He is our cousin. Yes.
Yes. And throughout this whole pandemic and lockdown, it's been so amazing to cultivate space in which we're talking about stillness, right? And allowing the witnesses of the performance to process and to be there with you, how you all are holding space within these tensions, within history, within, you know, this moment now. And we've been talking a lot about the kind of spine of the piece. Like, what is it that you know that the audience doesn't necessarily know, or the witnesses don't necessarily know, but you're still holding a space for that inside of yourself? And so I started to think about this question that you asked, like, how do we understand the loss that is both ours and not ours?
Ooh, yeah.
You know, and when you think of this whole spine, and I love that you brought in Nona Faustein's image, because I am a major fan of Nona Faustein, and she actually came to do a lecture.
She's so dope.
And
we never met, but I am a fan.
Okay, that has to happen now. It's gonna happen. Y'all
so dope. I love her work so much. Not just that. I mean, that is brilliant, but just so much of what she's up to is awesome.
Right? Like everything. And I've just been thinking about, what does it mean to kind of hold this space for these like convergent truths and realities and various lineages, and how parts of our history are really colliding together. But we have these kind of bodies of vehicles, and also performance and creating rituals as a way to kind of engage with these presences and these ghosts. Absolutely. You know? So I've been thinking about your practice in that respect. Even the piece in which you went to the continent for the first time, to Gambia. And I was just thinking about my experiences arriving in Lagos. And I felt like a ghost that had arrived, because I kept seeing so many faces that were exactly like the faces from my community back home in Kentucky. Right. And I remember people kept telling me, welcome back. And I was like, but this is my first time here. Like, it took me 3 days to realize that they were talking about the Middle Passage.
Yes.
And when that hit me, and sometimes I have these experiences through travel, but then I'm like, this needs to become a part of something else, like a part of this archive, a way that it's not only just my experience that I'm trying to process, but how can we all sit in a room, in a space, and really try to process this together. Can you speak to like, how do these ideas kind of come to you? Or is it more so just as you float through life and these kinds of experiences and you take note of them, and
That's
for
a
when
great
you use them?
That's a great question. And I think it goes back even to that picture of all those awesome like Haitians and African Americans kicking it together. I mean, to have two parents from two different, both of them be Black, but from two different countries, I think a lot of my sensibility and a lot of my work comes from that. Because first of all, it showed me from jump that Blackness is deeply heterogeneous and diverse. You can be Black, but that doesn't mean that you would necessarily have everything in common. And we mean, that even from being an African American person in the United States, the North, South, East, West. I mean, it's just, it's quite, like heterogeneous and rich. But I think trying to understand for myself my relationships to like my folk in Alabama and then my folk in Pétionville and Jacmel, like trying to understand my relationship to them and then their relationship to each other. And then feeling questions about my own authenticity, feeling questions about what was dispossessed from me and what could I claim, having a whole sort of journey around that. I think that was really interesting. I think how much I had to learn, or how much I did learn from books. Or I remember reading In For Colored Girls by Ntozake, like the first time I read that. And then there was somebody, that whole piece about Toussaint, and they were at the library and there was somebody like, my name is Toussaint Jones, or whatever. And just being like, I know Toussaint, I just think I had an antenna up very early on for thinking about history and culture and the kind of personal iconography that integrated Blackness in different forms, so that helps to stimulate my imagination. And I mean, I'm just like tripping right now, like the Biden administration, more Haitians have just been deported right now. I mean, my heart is breaking. I'm like, what is going on? What are you doing? And I'm trying to understand a response that's appropriate, petitions and whatever. So I think just paying attention as well, trying to pay attention to what's going on, but also to be both in the contemporary and then also to be in the timeless. This thing with the Middle Passage, that was like yesterday. I mean, we are still dealing profoundly with the ramifications of that everywhere. And I went to a wonderful convening put together by Gladys Francis, who teaches at Georgia State University. Georgia State, that's where she is. I know she's in Atlanta. And it was all of these people from across the diaspora. And there was an incredible thing that happened where there was just and like French Caribbean people from Martinique and Guadeloupe, they're French. So they can be like, yes. And one person just said something like, yeah, well, those people, they did not really care about us when they gave us away. So it was just something, just like some off the cuff comment like that. And there was an African scholar there, African woman scholar. She was like, let me stop you right there. She was just like, we miss you so much. Even right now, oh my goodness, I'm feeling goosebumps. You could have heard a pin drop in that room. It was something so intense. These people that just what they were talking about, it was like, we miss you so much.
And that's like a channel, like she wasn't speaking. It's like we, that we becomes, and that's what your work does. It's like a we that opens up.
But like, how do you speak for the loss that is not yours? This woman, she just stepped right into it and she was like, we. She just spoke for all of it. She just spoke for everybody. Like, we miss you. We don't take it lightly that you're gone. It just was, but I mean, just the power of that. It was something, it was like spell casting. It was ritual. People cried. It was so incredible. And I thought like, that's also something around, there was art in that. That was live art action that was happening there. And it was a kind of a true making in time and space that I felt very honored to witness. And it's that thing that you're just talking about. Gladys created a space for that kind of exchange to happen. I know Fabienne Canor, who's an amazing writer, she was there. There's just some really incredible people, and I would encourage people to look up Gladys Francis's work as well. It looks like Francis, Francis, because that language stuff is tricky too. If you don't have French, then there's a whole bunch of stuff people are doing in that realm that you might not know about. Vice versa, if you're in the French realm, well, there's so much hegemony around English that you're more likely to know, but Spanish, Portuguese, and then all the kind of languages that were indigenous to places on the continent. It's just, there's so much knowledge and wisdom. And so I'm just voracious and curious and want to build work on things that I'm learning about and dreaming into.
Sometimes do you ever feel like there's just not enough time in this lifetime to kind of talk about all the things that you want to talk about, and the people that you want to be in conversation with, seen and unseen? A lot of times I kind of have that existential crisis within my work, because there is so much rupture, and there's so much pain, and there's all of these other elements of our being, of everybody's being, in this earthly realm. But then I'm also trying to figure out spaces to talk about joy, or perhaps even making work about that rupture is joyful for me, you know? And I like how you're creating these new possibilities to talk about joy, and how do you cultivate joy, and how do you cultivate joy with each other? I mean, I think I still have my paper from, it's in my studio now, I'm at home, but my paper from Experiments in Joy from Call and Response. My paper says a girl was snatched.
Yeah.
And I have one that I picked up from the performance and I took with me, and then I have the other one in which you thanked us for being a girl who was called. That's what those are the papers that you gave to us. So I've just been thinking a whole lot about what does it mean to have this calling to speak about these ruptures, or things that people may not necessarily see as kind of heavy topics. Okay, so we're coming to attend a lecture, but then you get on the table.
That's
and
right.
Then we have to contend, with your body, with history. A great artist once told me, because I was just so angry about all of these different things that were just happening, from the migrants crossing at sea, and just so much Black death, and just all of these things just continuing to go on, and history repeating itself. And this artist told me, he was like, well, Kenyatta, when you walk into a room, people are already putting those assumptions upon your body. How can you move beyond what those assumptions are and just create whatever the hell you want?
Exactly.
And then the assumptions are the medium within themselves, in which the witnesses are going to mold and be participants within the performance, whether they know that they're participating or not. And, with your pieces, I feel like you're able to, what that medium is, and you're just handing it to people, and you're like, here, you take some of this, you take some of this, and then everybody is collaborating without even necessarily knowing that they are. When you tell the audience to do whatever they want, it's like, well, I want to pick this up.
Yeah.
I said, I want to take mine home. Right. And I've kept it with me, because if I keep this with me, this is a memorial of this person and of this time and what was going on. And I do not want to forget.
Right.
I don't want to forget that moment. So, I mean, there's something interesting in how you walk into spaces. Even when you did a performance with the Contifrica Project, you walked in with a suitcase filled with soil.
That's right.
So you have a thing within your work in which you bring your body is a suitcase, your body is a container.
Right.
When you say opening space, you literally unzipping this thing, right. And then all of this comes out. Is this something that you just naturally gravitate to, or is this a rhythm that you like this haunts you? You can't stop unzipping and even the closet. You have to open the closet up and enter. So there's all of these gestures that repeat and repeat and repeat.
Absolutely.
It's so powerful.
Well, it's such a good question that you're asking, because first of all, I don't always know. And that's why the Mexico, that's a whole big body of work that I'm so excited, because there's a project. I'm hopeful finally people will be able to see more of that here in the United States, because that was something I was just so sure that I knew what the audience was going to do. And I was wrong. I did not know when they saw me, I was not clicked into what it was they were seeing. That
Mm,
was so good for me. That
mm,
made me have to just deal with some of my bad habits and some of my assumptions in a really different way, and to think about my intentionality. The
mm,
truth is, though, and that's what you're getting to, some of these things, they are my personal iconography. I mean, our friend Rosamond S. King is often like, Gabrielle, why are you always on the floor? You know, it's
saying
true.
that.
There's something in me that gets grounded. I want to be like in the earth. There's something that's
Mm,
like pulling me, and then it brings me back up. Or that's a
mm,
thing. Or, like the shovel, the mirror. There's something about
mm,
protection, reflection,
mm,
carving. There's something about disclosing and opening because I'm
mm,
fairly protected as a person. And then in the space of performance, I can become less protected because the live art action is creating a force field around me. There's
mm,
something also about being a stone cold fool. I mean, some of the work I've done, I let myself do things in performance that in real life I would never do. I remember after hieroglyphics, there was an older gentleman. I had like my toe out. I had him like get down on his knees and put a shoe on my foot. I mean, just in real life, he was just like, oh, he was like, oh, did I do it right? I said, oh, you could, you know what? I think you could do that better. You could do it. I mean, this is the kind of thing in my actual life.
mhm,
I mean, I don't know. That's where you can get into certain, there's sort of subcultures of desire at work there. But so there's also like, it's not all heavy but it's also like the trickster. It's the playfulness. It's
mhm,
turning on a dime. It's being able to be more than one thing at the same time.
mhm,
And it's allowing ourselves to be whatever we need to be, but also being haunted
mhm,
by the ways who we would have been if we had not been snatched,
mhm,
who like there's a whole way that we are
mhm,
culturally,
mhm,
um that's so new. And and so there is this other thing. I know my sister does work in global health, and she's done projects like in Ethiopia, and she did Doctors Without Borders, whatever. She says, I keep thinking, what would have happened if the Middle Passage hadn't happened? That's such a
mm,
huge thing to think about. But for
mm,
her, she thinks like, what are the things that we would know that we don't know?
mm.
And so there's a romanticizing there, but then there's also something that feels kind of true. I don't know. I mean,
Contemplating
yeah.
possibilities. I'm in studying a lot of like sound therapy recently and thinking about like healing crises and like what certain vibrations do to the body in order to like make it well. And you may go through these like sweats and fevers and chills and having to expel all of these different things from your body. And I've been thinking about it's so weird, but wars and just the vibration that sound makes, the vibrations of the Atlantic, of the sharks, of the people, of the boats, just all of this sound, right, that's like still there. And then I even think about like the sound of the universe and chaos and destruction and all of these things. Like, I mean, some believe that we came from a meteor that like hit the earth. Like,
Mhm.
what if we would have just went a couple of centimeters just away? Like when you say like timelessness too, like I've even been like pondering that, like all of these like what ifs, what ifs, what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. And I don't know, like now I'm starting to think about that, the balance of those forces. Like, of course the Middle Passage happened, of course it did, you know. Um, and what would we be without the Middle Passage? What would we be because of it? I think we're still trying to figure out the be
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah,
be
yeah, yeah,
because,
yeah.
and still trying to like formulate those. And I mean, the phrase everything happens for a reason. And it's just like I'm really inspired by Sadia Hartman's just research and being and everything, and Lose Your Mother, and how the way she goes searching for absence and presence, the
Mhm.
presence of absence, the absence of presence, and just all of those kinds of conundrums of being. And I've, instead of saying like, what would we be if, I've been saying like, of course this happened. Now what?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's so interesting as we're like contemplating police brutality. What does it mean to make work during the COVID era? What does it mean to be an artist? What is performance right now? After coming from the Trump era, what is truth? I love the when it was like this statement, it was like the Onion, like you can't even, the Onion is out of business because you can't even I see we got another 10 minutes left. The Onion, you can't even like the Onion is like made up headlines, but now you look at actual headlines and it looks like you're reading the Onion. Like
Right. The Onion wouldn't even be as nuts.
yeah, and
It just has gone, it went to a place that was beyond
truth, beyond
art or
fiction,
something. Yeah. Beyond
like
satire.
and I'm thinking about this too, because about this like perpetual forgetting too. And I love the fact that you talked about like holding on to like all of these photocopies, these papers, like everything that you can get your hands on. And I have this whole theory about being a keeper or a seeker of history. And sometimes you can be both. Sometimes you're a keeper and you're holding on to things and you don't even know why you're holding on to it, right? And then a seeker is the one that goes in and that asks all the questions and gets on everybody's nerves and drives everybody nuts, because it's like, we don't want to think about that. We didn't have time to think about that. We had to immigrate to this place. We had to move. We had to go in the middle of the night. I don't know. Stop asking me questions.
Right.
But the seeker can't. Like the seeker was born to be a seeker, to like ask these questions. And so there's something about when the seeker and the keeper, when they get together and the seeker asks the questions and the keeper's like, I have like 50 of those, like here. I don't know why. But Gabrielle, I see your practice and your being like you are both the seeker and the keeper at the same time, because you're creating these archives for the seekers to come, with their questions, and you're like keeping it for them. But within your archives, when the seekers come, they find your questions.
That's right. I'm seeking too.
And it's like a trickster energy where it's like, well, what is life? And they're like, but wait a minute, I picked up this book so you could tell me.
Right.
That's not how it works. So I just love how you're always embodying these kinds of elements all within it. I mean, your whole presentation was questions. I wrote down like 50,000 questions.
That is a huge modality for me. Q&A, questions, but even Q and Q. But thank you so much for what you just said about my work, and also again for this opportunity. It's always really fun to share. And I gave a lot of information, but if people want to learn more about me, you can find me on Instagram, Gabrielle Seville. That's my new thing I'm trying. Like, you can find me on Instagram, but y'all know, like, I'm very Gen X, so we're going to see how that goes. But I have been enjoying just sharing there. And you can also email experimentsenjoy@gmail.com if you want to like get on the newsletter, or if you want to ask me a question about anything. I'm definitely reachable. So.
And she really is. And she has.
I am. I respond. I do.
So good. Thank you so much for coming. We could like talk for hours. Obviously, we're friends, so we do that.
Yes, and I'm so thankful to be friends with you.
Yes, thank you for coming. And
thank you, and everyone. Let's just like claim your education, protect your magic, make your art. I want to experience it, and take care and be healthy.
Ashe.
Bye.